welcome back to Rugged Mountain Homestead. If you're new here, my name is Sarah and I am super excited to be in the kitchen with you today. If you have seen my last Azure video, you will notice or remember that I added maple sugar to that order. And with sharing the order with you, one of our friends suggested this recipe from the kingarthurflour website, and it is for maple pumpkin rolls. Just the sound of that was like so delicious and so in with the season. So I went to the site, which I'm looking at now, and looked at the ingredients and was like, okay, one of our friends suggested it. We need to get in the kitchen together and make it together. So that's what we're doing today. We are making maple pumpkin rolls. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, I already know that I'm going to have to make just a few little adjustments due to my altitude. I'm at 6,600 feet above sea level, so sometimes when you're baking, you have to kind of make some adjustments. But I'm going to go ahead through this recipe as though I were doing it exactly to the recipe. And I'll probably tell you what I'm changing along the way as well. So first off, it tells us to get our flour together. And my flour is already together in my mixing bowl. And the recipe calls for 2 1/4 cups King Arthur unbleached all-purpose flour, and then 1 3/4 cups King Arthur golden wheat flour. So I'm also going to put the recipe as it's written in the description box below. So now that we have our flour together, I'm just going to go ahead and put in all the ingredients in the order that they're listed. And so with the first being 1 cup of pumpkin puree. Next are 2 large eggs. I am going to crack them into a measuring cup because these are eggs from our hens. And this is just a good habit to be in, just in case there's a little anything off. I've never had that happen, but you know, there's a first time for everything. And if something is going to go a little wonky, it's usually going to be when you have someone in the kitchen with you. 1/4 cup of lukewarm water, 4 tablespoons of butter at room temperature, 1/4 cup of dry milk, 1 1/2 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice. For those of you who are new, mine is in this jar because I do make my own pumpkin pie spice, and that is an old video of mine. I have it on an old video. If I can find it, I will link it below as well if you're interested in seeing that. 1/4 cup of brown sugar. Brown sugar is just sugar and molasses. That's why I have the molasses out, because I make my own brown sugar, and you can make it to the color that you like. But anyway, it's 1/4 cup of packed brown sugar. Okay, and then we have 1 1/2 teaspoons of table salt. Any table salt will do, I'm sure. We use sea salt for our table salt. So since it just says table salt, I'm sure it'll be fine. Okay, it calls for 2 teaspoons of instant yeast or active dry yeast. If you get the active dry yeast in the pouches, the last time I checked, it was 2 1/2 teaspoons in there. This yeast, for whatever reason, I keep it in the refrigerator, but it seems to be maybe getting a little bit old because it's not foam. When I proof it, it's not, the foam is not as high as it used to be. So I'm going to put in 3 teaspoons. I have more in the freezer, but I really want to use up what I have first. Okay, so that is it for the dough. Let's go ahead and take it over to the stand mixer and let it get combined real well. Let it knead for a little while. And I'm going to go ahead and let this mix for 5 minutes. Okay, now that is nice and mixed. It has pulled away from the sides of the bowl like we like to see it. My dough hook is really nice and cleaned off. So let's take it back to the counter. Okay, so as you can see, it's kind of already in a dough ball. All I'm going to do is just roll it around a couple times to shape it. And since you're supposed to be in a greased bowl, I'm just going to add a little tiny bit of oil to this bowl. All right. And I'll just kind of rub that over the dough ball and make sure it's getting around the sides of the mixing bowl. It's just so it doesn't stick too bad when it's rising. Usually any type of yeast dough is going to stick a little bit, but it's going to be easy to pull away. Okay, there I have my dough ball. Now, with this being a yeast dough, it is going to need time to rise. So you want to put it in a warm place, covered. I'm going to cover it with this tea towel. And since the weather has gotten cooler up here, I'm going to go ahead and let it rise in the oven with just the oven light on to kind of give it some warmth but not heat. And we're going to let this rise until double. That's usually about 2 hours where I am. So after it has risen till it's double in size, we'll go ahead and come back together at that time. Okay, now I have my dough out, my pumpkin dough. It's really more of a dense feeling dough, but I'm going to go ahead and get it rolled out now. The directions had said 14 by 22, but honestly, I don't pay a whole lot of mind to that. Basically, what I'm going to do is get it into a rectangle to the best of my ability. And I guess probably like a 1/2 inch thick, we'll see. I'm going to try and shape it up a little bit. Okay, so now that we have our dough rolled out, we're going to go ahead and start making our filling. And that is going to be 1 8-ounce block of cream cheese, 1/3 cup of maple sugar, and 2 tablespoons of King Arthur flour. Again, I'm not using King Arthur flour, but I say that because it is their recipe. So 2 tablespoons of unbleached all-purpose flour. I'm going to go ahead and take this over to the mixer, get it mixed up until it's nice and fluffy, and then I will be adding 1 egg and 1/4 teaspoon of maple syrup. Now, I did get that really nice and creamy. I did have to stop twice and with my spatula just kind of mix it up together. You don't want any lumps and you don't want it grainy from the maple sugar. So if it gets if it's looking clumped or a little bit grainy, or if it's getting stuck around your beaters, just stop it for a second and stir it up with a spatula. I'm going to now add our 1 egg and 1/4 teaspoon of maple syrup. And we're just going to mix a little bit more. Okay, and I'm still going to give mine a few good stirs with the spatula. It's really creamy looking, like a nice frosting. And that's kind of the look you're going for. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this on the pumpkin dough and just spread it on. Okay, so I'm going to spread that all out, but I'm going to kind of leave an inch around the perimeter so that it won't be a mess when I go to roll it up. And just to note that while some of the steps like spreading this are super easy, this is the type of thing that I say is made with a lot of love, because there's a lot to it. It's not just simply like when you throw a cobbler together and throw it in the oven. There's a lot of steps. You make the dough and having it rise and making the icing and, you know. So if you wanted to make it for company or just for your husband or kids or just someone you care about, you have to do it at least a day in advance. Okay, now I'm going to try to very carefully roll this up from your long side and just continue to roll it like in a log. And I wanted to use all of the cream cheese frosting, but I can tell you now it's making a little bit of goo right there. It's a little bit much right through here. And as you can probably tell, this is my first time making these as well. Okay. Because normally, you know, when you make cinnamon rolls, it's like cinnamon and sugar. It's not any type of cream filling. Okay, so you're going to want to kind of pinch that together. I'm wondering if that frosting right there would almost become like a glue. I'm tempted to spread it over like that. I mean, maple cream cheese frosting, you just can't waste something like that, right? Over here I have my 13 by 9 inch pan, and it's lightly greased. Now I'm very carefully going to slide this silicone mat out, or I'm just going to move this because I cut on it once before and sliced it into pieces. Making cinnamon rolls. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. But you know, I didn't roll mine out to the exact measurement, so we're going to have 10 because I don't like them being super small, and Dean doesn't either. So I'm just going to stick them in my pan, just like that. Since I have some of this glaze left, or frosting, I'm just going to wipe it on the tops a little bit. Dean likes his cinnamon rolls frosted, so I'm not worried about having frosting on the top and it being a bit extra. Okay, these are what my maple pumpkin muffins are looking like, with that cream cheese frosting in the center and on top. They need to go in for a second rise, so I'm going to go ahead and put them in the oven with just the oven light on and let them rise until they're nice and puffy. Okay, the rolls have finished their second rise. They look so good, even just like this. But I'm going to go ahead and make the glaze while I'm waiting for the oven to preheat. These are going to be baked at 375 degrees for 30 minutes. Okay, now normally I would not make this glaze and put it on our rolls, our sweet rolls, because I think with that type of filling and how it's, you know, oozed over, it's going to be sweet enough. But since I'm making this recipe for the very first time, I'm going to go ahead and go by the recipe. So the glaze is just 1 cup of confectioner's sugar, a pinch of salt, and 1/4 cup maple syrup. This is going to be sweet. Dean will probably love it. This will probably be a little bit too sweet for me. And I'm just going to combine the two. Looks like it might take a little bit of elbow grease to get this to that consistency. Okay, so the oven has come to temperature. I'm going to go ahead and put the sweet rolls into the oven, let them bake for 30 minutes. And I'm going to finish up on the glaze, and I want to show you something. Go ahead and set the timer, lest I forget. Okay. I had to add a little bit of milk to it. Not a lot, probably like 1/8 of a cup. I just kind of eyeballed it, because I don't know if it's because we're up here in altitude. A lot of things, when it comes to baking, I have to add a little bit of extra liquid too. But this is about finished here, and I have a nice thick glaze. Now I'm just still working it a little bit, just because those bits that are on the whisk, I just want to see if I can get them all incorporated. Now this makes plenty of glaze. So when the rolls come out of the oven, I'm going to set them on a wire rack to cool. As they start to cool and they're still warm, that's when I'm going to brush them with this glaze. And then as the rolls completely cool, this glaze should kind of harden on a little bit. Okay, so the timer just went off. I'm going to go ahead and get the rolls out of the oven and we can take a look. Okay, so I baked them for the 30 minutes. They're a little brown, so the glaze will probably help with that. So I could have either put them on for 25 minutes or maybe lowered the rack a little bit. They're going to be fine because they're still soft, but I didn't get up and check them at the 25 mark. I'm very tired, so I just let them go the full 30. But here's what they look like.
So not bad, just a little bit brown on top. And like I said, they're still soft, and the glaze will help with that. So let's just let them cool down for a few minutes before I put the glaze on them, and then we'll see if Dean wants to give them a taste. Okay, so the rolls have been cooling for a little bit, and let's go ahead and add this glaze on. I'm going to leave one unglazed just because I know that glaze is sweet and I want to see what it tastes like without it. So let's go ahead and get the glaze on here. Maybe just frost it. It made a lot. Okay, I'm gonna let that set about 5 minutes and call Dean down and see if he wants to give him a taste. Dean came downstairs and he did a taste test for me. Empty plate, 2 rolls. He ate the one without frosting and the one with frosting. So he liked them. He said they were both good. He prefers cinnamon, but he really dug into this. And he had me put the rest of the glaze on, so they are like super glazed now. And he is probably going to have these finished by the end of the week. So in my opinion, if he likes them, then it was worth the effort. This was a very labor-intensive dish to make. Several hours. So I would make this for a seasonal flavor and for him as a sweet gesture or for company. But this is not something I will do every week. But it is very, very good. But it's very sweet. So go ahead and try it out and let me know how you like it. As always, thank you for joining me up here on Rugged Mountain Homestead in the kitchen today. We are always so glad when you do. I look forward to seeing you next time, and until then, take care.